I was 2 miles off the cattle trail when the thunder cracked like a whip and I heard something that didn't belong to the wind. A woman's sob, raw and sharp. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks again, the kind of tricks that get louder when you've been too long in your own company. But then I heard it again. Not a coyote, not the wind, not a bird. I cried. I turned my horse, Dusty, toward the sound without thinking, just gut and instinct. The sky was already bruising with clouds, low and mean. Storm season on the Wyoming. Plains don't ask permission. It comes the way regret does, sudden and hard. The rain hit fast. Cold needles, sideways. Dusty whinnied and stomped, and I kept my hat low, my collar up. I scanned the hills, every crack and shadow between the rocks. And then I saw her, huddled behind a slab of granite, like she was trying to disappear into the stone. She looked like a ghost, soaked through, dress torn near the shoulder, hair pasted to her cheek like ink across wet paper. One arm hugged her middle. Her other hand was scraped raw, fingers clawed in the dirt like she'd been crawling. She didn't see me at first. That I dismounted slow, boots sinking in the mud. The thunder cracked again. She flinched hard and let out another sob. That sound damn near cracked something in me. "Ma'am," I said gently, raising both hands. "I ain't here to hurt you." She looked up, wild-eyed. Blue, maybe green eyes, couldn't tell in the rain. Her lips were split, one cheek swollen. Her dress had blood at the hem. She didn't answer, just stared, breathing like a deer that knows the bullet's already coming. I slipped off my coat and held it out. "You'll freeze like that." She didn't take it, but she didn't run either. "You need shelter," I said. "There's a shack yonder, up the rise. Ain't much, but it's dry. I got a horse. You can ride with me." She blinked slow. I could see her weighing every word, every move. Finally, she nodded once. No sound, just nodded. I wrapped the coat around her shoulders, careful not to touch more than I had to. She winced anyway. I saw bruises, dark ones, fresh. Whoever did this to her didn't deserve to call himself a man. I helped her onto Dusty's back and climbed up behind, keeping space between us, guiding the reins loose in my hands. She held onto the saddle horn with fingers that shook too much for the cold alone. The wind howled like something living. Lightning flashed sharp and fast across the plains, and every time it did, I saw more of her. Dirt in her knees, the raw line of her throat, and something else, shame, like she was trying to disappear into herself. She never said a word. That we rode hard for 20 minutes, maybe more. Time warps when it rains like that, like the whole world's been swallowed. In gray and thunder, I found the old shepherd's shack by memory. I'd passed it a dozen times on cattle runs. Just a one-room square with a chimney and a crooked door. But it was dry, and dry was salvation tonight. I got her down first, slow and gentle. Her legs buckled, and I caught her without thinking. She stiffened under my arms, but didn't pull away. "I got you," I murmured. Inside the shack, it was dark and musty but standing strong. The roof didn't leak. There was a pile of old timber by the hearth. I lit a match with shaking hands and coaxed a fire to life while she sat near the wall, curled tight as a wire. She didn't move when the fire caught, just stared at it, eyes empty. I peeled off my wet shirt and tossed it near the door, hung her coat nearby too, found an old blanket in the saddlebag and laid it beside the fire. "You can sit closer," I said, voice low. "Warm up." Still nothing. I sat across from her, gave her space, kept my boots on. One hand rested on my knee. I didn't look at her too hard. I figured she'd had enough eyes on her for a lifetime. The fire snapped and hissed, filling the silence. It was the only sound besides the storm clawing at the roof. Then, so quiet I almost missed it, her voice. "You're not like the others, are you?" I looked up. Her eyes were fixed on me, not with fear this time. Just a question, like she was trying to believe something good could still exist. I didn't answer right away, just held her gaze. She was the one who finally looked away. "No, ma'am," I said softly. "I'm not." And I meant it. The rain didn't let up. It beat on the shack's roof like a war drum, steady and mean. The wind wheezed through the cracks in the boards, and the fire kept flaring and shrinking like it couldn't make up its mind. I tossed on another log and watched the flames stretch toward her, still curled up by the wall, still not moving. She hadn't said anything since that one line, "That you're not like the others, are you?" I hadn't asked for more. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any story. But that kind of silence, The hollow kind. I knew it. It didn't come from shyness. It came from damage. And I figured she'd talk when her soul could carry it. Got some dry things in the old pack, I said, finally breaking the quiet. They're men's clothes, but warm. There's a curtain there. I nodded toward a sagging sheet nailed across the back corner, likely meant to be a changing nook. You're welcome to change. Fire'll help. She looked at me with those sea glass eyes again. Then, wordless, stood on shaky legs and stepped behind the sheet. I kept my eyes on the flames. I heard the faint rustle of fabric, the soft grunt of effort. Part of me noticed the silence her crying had left behind, how thick and lonely it was. When she came back out, she wore one of my old flannel shirts and a pair of patched canvas trousers, rolled at the ankles. Her hair was still wet, but her eyes were sharper now, watching me cautiously. Better, I said, with a small nod. She didn't smile, but something shifted in her jaw, like a tight knot loosening just enough that I poured 2 cups of boiled coffee, strong and bitter the way trail hands drink it, and offered one to her. She took it with both hands, fingers still trembling. You got a name? I asked softly. She hesitated. Then, Mira. It was the first time she'd given me something real. I didn't push further. I'm Eli. She gave a quiet, almost invisible nod. And then she sat beside the fire, still a good distance away, but not curled against the wall anymore. I took that as a kind of trust. Minutes passed. Maybe more. The wind howled. The fire cracked. She sipped slow. I was with a traveling camp, she said suddenly, voice flat. They said they needed cooks. Help with horses. I thought it was honest work. Just for the season. I stayed still. Let her go on at her pace. There were 6 of us. Women. Some younger than me. The men ran wagons up through Montana territory. But they lied. They took our papers. Our money. We weren't workers. We were property. I didn't speak. My hand curled tighter around the tin cup. I waited for a night when they were drunk. Slipped out. They had a bloodhound, but I crossed a stream to lose the scent. Her eyes flicked up to the roof. Then the rain started. I set my coffee down slow. You did what you had to. I didn't think I'd make it. I didn't even think I wanted to anymore. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. Then you showed up. I didn't have a sermon or a speech, just nodded and said, Storm brought us both here. She watched me for a while, like she wasn't sure if she should believe that. Then she glanced toward Dusty, who'd been tied up outside under the lean-to. You're gentle with him, she said. He's earned it. You talk soft. I ride alone a lot. Ain't many folks to shout at. Another beat of silence. Then, you're not scared of quiet? I shook my head. Some men get nervous if it ain't loud. Me, I think quiet's just space for the truth to stretch its legs. That made her huff, the smallest sound of agreement. Maybe even the start of a laugh, cut short. She reached for a nearby rag and motioned toward my shoulder. You're bleeding. I glanced down. A slice from earlier, branch or rock, just under my collarbone. You don't have to, let me. Her voice was firm, and her hands were shaking again as she dipped the cloth in a bit of water and pressed it to my skin. I didn't flinch, but my breath did catch. Not from pain, just the touch. Gentle, careful, and rare. Her fingers worked. Slow. I could feel her breath, warm and unsteady, near my neck. Thank you, I said, when she was done. She pulled her hand away like it burned that we sat in silence again, but it wasn't the hollow kind anymore. It was something else. Something like calm. Lost my wife 6 winters ago, I said quietly. Fever took her quick. Her eyes softened. I'm sorry. Me too. I stared at the fire. I never tried again. Guess I thought I'd buried all that with her. But some things stick around, even when you pretend they don't. She looked down. Grief makes people disappear. I nodded. Grief makes a man part stone. She rubbed her hands together. I feel like a ghost sometimes. Like I only show up when the world's dark. You showed up in a storm, I said. Takes guts to keep breathing in weather like that. For the first time, she looked me dead in the eyes. So why'd you help me? I didn't blink. Because you needed it. And because I've been cold before. Too cold. Long enough to know that when you feel warmth again, you don't turn your back on it. She didn't say anything, but her lips parted like a breath was caught in her chest. The fire burned low. The storm outside had softened, but not ended. She leaned her head against the wall behind her, eyelids fluttering. She was tired, bone tired, But she didn't go back to the corner that I shifted slightly. She looked over. You can sleep, I said. I'll keep watch. She didn't move, but a few minutes later, slow and tentative as anything I've seen, she inched closer, the blanket wrapped around her like armor. She sat beside me. Her shoulder brushed mine. And then, gentle as dusk, she let her head fall onto my shoulder that I didn't move. Didn't breathe for a second, just let it happen. The fire crackled, warm and steady. Outside, the storm still whispered over the plains, and in that quiet, I whispered to her, "You're safe now. But you don't have to leave if you don't want to." Come morning, the storm broke. The first rays of sunlight cut through the mist like gold blades, turning the wet plains into a silver sea. The world outside the shack steamed and glistened, as if it had been scrubbed raw and clean. You could smell the earth, fresh, alive. Mira was still asleep when I stirred the last of the fire's embers, careful not to make noise. Her head had slipped from my shoulder sometime in the night and found its way to the blanket. She looked softer now, not healed, not whole, but unburdened, if only a little. She opened her eyes when the light hit her face. No panic this time, just a blink. A breath. I nodded once. Morning. She sat up, tucking her damp hair behind her ears. The storm's gone. Sure is. We packed in quiet. I gave her time. Let her move slow. I didn't ask where she'd go. Didn't ask what she wanted. Not yet. When Dusty was saddled and the fire was out, I turned to her. I can ride you to town, I said gently. It's about 10 miles west. They'll have beds, a dock, maybe work. She looked past me, toward the horizon where the hills rolled like frozen waves, endless and open. Her voice was small. I don't know what's next. I nodded. Don't have to. She looked at me again. This time, it lingered that I didn't reach for her. Just spoke plain. I've got land, not far from here. Not much, but it's quiet. A porch that needs sweeping. Coffee every morning. A spare room too. Her eyes searched mine, not for lies, but for weight. For truth. After a long pause, she said, "All right." We rode out slowed, in no rush, no words. Just wind brushing the grass, birds daring to sing again, and the steady rhythm of hooves pressing fresh tracks into soft earth. Mira didn't hold on to me this time. She sat behind me, her hands resting lightly on the saddle, balanced, present. The ranch came into view by late afternoon, just a small house tucked into a low valley, framed by cottonwoods. The barn leaned a little, the fence needed mending, but it was home. It had been too quiet for too long. Mira slid off Dusty and took it all in with those thoughtful eyes. The porch had a chair, a pair of worn boots by the door that hadn't moved in years. A patch of wildflowers grew untamed near the edge of the garden bed. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and now, it might be ours. That I let her explore at her own pace. She ran her hand along the fence rails, paused beside the well. Then she walked to the porch and sat, not asking, just settling like maybe she could belong there. That night, I brushed down Dusty under the lean-to behind the barn, the sky painted purple and orange. It was the kind of quiet that didn't ache, the kind that let you breathe. That I heard the door creak. Mira stepped outside with a mug in her hand. Steam curled up from it like smoke signals. She walked to me, barefoot, wearing that same flannel shirt. Her hair was dry now, pulled back. She held out the mug without a word. I took it. The coffee was hot. Familiar. We stood there in silence. The brush strokes of dusk fading behind the hills. After a minute, she leaned her head gently against my arm, and I didn't move. Didn't speak. I just let the warmth settle in. Not the fire kind. Not the storm kind. The staying kind. That night, the fire burned slow, but it didn't need to be fed. Sometimes warmth finds you, long after the cold leaves. She came in with the rain, but stayed long after the storm.